Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are jumping right in, and I mean right in, to a story that is just getting more and more complex.
It really is.
We're talking about Sean Diddy Combs, a huge name, obviously, in music, entertainment, for decades. But this isn't just about the headlines. It's about trying to understand two completely separate legal situations that are happening at the same time.
It's a real study in contrasts, isn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, you have a convicted man. He's in prison. He's in the system. He's supposedly working on rehabilitation to get out early.
Right. That track seems very structured, almost closed.
Exactly. But then you have this other track running completely parallel where these serious new allegations are just now coming to the surface.
And these are allegations that point to a pattern of behavior from before he was even convicted. And now law enforcement has to open a whole new investigation.
A completely fresh one.
And that dual reality, that's really the core of our deep dive today. The big news that brought this all back into the spotlight was the LA County Sheriff's Department announcing they're looking into a new sexual battery claim against Combs.
Right.
So our mission today, for you, is to synthesize all this. We need to take the hard facts of his current prison sentence, which feels like an ending in a way, and put them right alongside these new volatile claims that are just beginning.
And our goal is to give you clarity and context. We're not here to just throw information at you. We're going to carefully layer the timeline of his 4-year sentence, the specifics of why he's even in prison.
Which is important because not everyone is clear on that.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And then we'll layer on these new reports. We're talking about a male producer and publicist making a claim about something that happened back in 2020. There's another confrontation in 2021. And then there's the whole legal journey of how a police report filed in Florida ends up in Los Angeles years later.
So when we look at all our sources, what are we really pulling out of them? We've got reports about where he is right now, FCI Fort Dix. We have the details of his conviction, specifically federal crimes related to prostitution, and now the very, very specific allegations of a new sexual battery claim. We're talking alleged exposure, intimidation, all at a warehouse in LA.
And that leads to the really essential question for this whole deep dive. It's kind of twofold. First, how does this new information, these new allegations, impact the system's view of him? I mean, he's supposed to be in there getting rehabilitated.
Does this change that narrative?
And second, what do all these logistical problems, the filing in Florida, the delay, the transfer to LA, what does that tell us about how the justice system even handles these kinds of delayed reports?
Especially when the person they're accusing is already locked up for something else. It's fast.
That's a fascinating and, frankly, a pretty sobering look at how criminal justice works today.
Okay, so let's start with the anchor point. The one thing we know for sure, the undeniable fact.
The foundation.
Exactly. Combs is in prison. He is serving time right now. As of November 17, he is serving a 4-year prison sentence.
And that is the crucial starting point. This isn't something he's awaiting trial for. He's a convicted felon. He's actively serving that sentence. The conviction itself was back in July, and that 4-year number comes directly from federal guidelines for the specific crimes he was found guilty of.
And we need to be really precise here because I think a lot of people got confused during the trial coverage. The media was mixing up all these different charges. What was he actually convicted of?
He was convicted of what our sources are calling prostitution-related convictions. Now, that sounds simple, but under federal law, it's pretty specific. It usually relates to moving people across state lines for illicit sexual activity.
The Mann Act, things like that.
Exactly, or similar statutes about interstate commerce being used for illegal purposes. Our sources say it involved flying his girlfriends and also male sex workers across the country for these drug-fueled sexual encounters over a period of many years.
So it's the pattern. The facilitation, the transport, that's the federal crime they could prove.
That's what they could prove. And that careful distinction is so important because it leads us to the most critical nuance of his whole case.
The acquittal.
The acquittal. He was acquitted of the really, really severe charges, sex trafficking and racketeering, IQ charges.
Which could have been a life sentence.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
A life sentence was on the table. And that acquittal is everything when you look at his situation now.
Why is it so hard to get a conviction on a charge like racketeering?
Oh, it's notoriously difficult. To prove ICO, you have to prove the existence of an organized criminal enterprise, a whole system. For sex trafficking, you have to prove coercion, a systematic scheme. It's a much higher bar.
So the prosecution probably made a strategic call.
It seems like it. They likely decided to focus on what they could absolutely prove. The travel records, the payments, the the specific encounters. They went for the prostitution-related offenses to guarantee a conviction rather than risking everything on the huge sweeping ICO charges.
And when you get acquitted of ARCO, that just fundamentally changes the math on the sentencing.
It completely limits the maximum potential sentence. It's the difference between 4 years and, well, potentially the rest of your life. It really shows you how complex these big federal cases are.
Okay, so 4 years it is. Let's talk about where he's serving that time. What are the details of his confinement?
He was transferred back in October to the Federal Correctional Institution at Fort Dix. That's in New Jersey.
And what kind of facility is that?
It's a low-security federal facility, which, again, is probably a result of the specific crimes he was convicted of, not the ones he was acquitted of.
His transfer itself was a pretty big deal, right?
It was a huge public moment. His official mugshot from when he was processed at Fort Dix went viral almost instantly.
And that mugshot, it's more than just a picture, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very stark symbol. For a celebrity who built an entire empire on image, on luxury, on being in control, that mugshot is the ultimate symbol of losing all of that.
It's the visual proof. From mogul to inmate.
It really is. It documents that transition and reinforces that these convictions, while not the most severe charges, are still very serious.
So let's get into the sentence management. This is where the federal system gets really interesting. His initial release date was supposedly May of 2028. But that changed.
Yeah, a slight change. Page 6 reported it. Officials apparently pushed it back just a little to June 4, 2028.
A month. That doesn't seem like a big deal.
It's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, but what it shows is the constant, meticulous recalculation that's always happening in the federal system. They're always adjusting for time served, good conduct, program participation. It's a living number.
But the real story isn't that 1-month adjustment. It's how an inmate can actively reduce their sentence. How does that actually work in the federal system?
It's a highly structured process now, mostly thanks to reforms like the First Step Act. It's not just about, behaving well.
It's not just about not getting into fights.
No, not at all. You have to meet very specific rehabilitation goals. The sources point to 2 main ways to earn these time credits. One is participating in substance abuse treatment programs, and the other is taking part in other programs designed to reduce the chances of reoffending.
And you can actually earn days off your sentence.
You can. For every 30 days of successfully participating in a program, you might earn 10 or even 15 days off your sentence. It all adds up, and it's a very powerful incentive for inmates to engage with these programs.
And we have some pretty specific reports from just last month about what Combs is doing inside Fort Dix.
We do. The reports state he's very heavily engaged in exactly these kinds of programs. For one, he has a job in the prison chapel.
What does that entail?
It's a common assignment. Usually things like routine maintenance or assisting with services is often given to inmates who are seen as stable, some level of trust from the staff. But the really crucial part is that he's also enrolled in what's described as an intense drug and rehab program.
And that detail, the intense drug and rehab program, that seems necessary, right, given the nature of his conviction?
It's absolutely necessary for 2 reasons. 1, for sentence mitigation, and 2, for legal compliance. Remember, the court documents repeatedly mention drug-fueled sexual encounters.
So the system has identified substance abuse as a key factor in his crimes.
Precisely. And when an inmate completes one of these comprehensive intense programs, we're talking maybe a 500-hour residential program, they can earn significant time credits, potentially hundreds of days off their sentence.
Wow, so that's much more substantial than that little 1-month adjustment we talked about.
Much more. It's the formalized, on-paper way for him to show he's addressing the root causes of his criminal behavior. It shows he's doing exactly what the federal system wants him to do to get out of prison sooner than that June 2028 date.
So we have this really clear picture, right? A convicted man, he's serving his time, he's doing the work, moving towards rehabilitation and release. It feels like a closed chapter.
In a way, yes.
But now we have to pivot. We
Yeah.
have to turn to this disturbing new chapter. Allegations that just rip all that certainty and closure right open again.
Exactly. And the investigation we're about to talk about, it's for things that happened before he was even convicted. But the report is only just now, years later, hitting the news. And that's the central challenge for everyone involved.
Okay, let's start with the accuser. The sources identify him as a male music producer and publicist. His name, of course, is redacted in the police report to protect his privacy.
As it should be. And the main allegation, the core of this new investigation, revolves around an incident that supposedly took place in 2020. That's the year we need to focus on for this sexual battery claim.
So let's walk through the specifics of the claim. And, we have to
Yeah.
be very careful to stick to what is actually in the police report, which NBC News cited. First, the setup. It seems to establish a professional setting.
Yes. The accuser claims he was asked to come to a photo shoot in 2020. It was at a warehouse in Los Angeles. And this is such a critical detail
Why is that so important?
because it immediately sets up a power dynamic in a professional context. He wasn't just there randomly. He was there, presumably, for work, under the premise of some kind of collaboration.
Okay. And then according to the report, the alleged act itself is, well, it's very specific.
It is. The report claims the situation escalated when Sean Combs allegedly exposed himself and was masturbating there at the warehouse.
And the report goes on to say that Combs then told the accuser to assist him.
Yes, that's the claim.
And there's one more physical detail that the producer reported after this alleged act.
Right. The claim concludes that Combs then tossed a dirty shirt at the man. And that detail, the dirty shirt, is the kind of thing investigators really pay attention to.
Because it's so specific, so bizarre.
Exactly. It's a very specific, almost strange physical detail. If an accuser can recall something like that consistently, it can sometimes reinforce the credibility of their memory and the traumatic nature of what they're describing. It adds this really powerful layer of humiliation or dehumanization to the claim.
These are obviously incredibly serious claims, but as you said, the event was in 2020, the report was filed just recently. That's a huge time lag.
A very significant lag, and it's a critical part of the story we have to analyze. Why did the producer wait several years from 2020 all the way to September of this year to officially report it?
And what reason did he give?
He gave a reason that is, unfortunately, incredibly common in these types of cases, especially with powerful figures. He said he didn't tell anyone for years because he felt profoundly embarrassed.
That feeling of embarrassment,
Yeah.
or maybe fear of not being believed, or of professional consequences, that's just a massive psychological hurdle, isn't it? We can't just gloss over that.
It's a profound barrier. And investigators, they know this. They're keenly aware of it, especially in an industry like music and entertainment where the power imbalances are just, they're so steep.
Right.
When the person you're accusing is a titan like Sean Combs, a victim often thinks the risk of ruining their career, of facing public ridicule, of just not being believed. All of that far outweighs any potential benefit of coming forward. So the delay, which is fueled by shame and embarrassment and fear, can actually reinforce the idea of genuine trauma.
Even though the defense will obviously use it to attack his credibility.
Oh, absolutely. The defense will hammer on that delay. But from an investigator's perspective, it provides context.
Can you elaborate a bit more on how those industry power dynamics feed into that reported embarrassment?
Well, you have to understand that in that industry, silence is often enforced by fear. A producer, a publicist, their entire career is built on relationships and access.
Your reputation is everything.
It's everything. And if you make an allegation like this against one of the most powerful men in the entire business, there's an implied threat that you'll be blacklisted. You'll lose future work. Your reputation will be destroyed. You might even face legal battles you can't possibly afford.
So the embarrassment he described, it's not just personal shame.
No, it's also the professional humiliation. The feeling that you are powerless in that moment, and the fear of the overwhelming consequences if you dare to speak up.
So investigators don't see the delay as proof that he's lying. They see it as part of the context of his emotional state.
Precisely. They'll treat it as context. Their job now is to focus on corroborating evidence. Can they find phone records of the invitation to the photo shoot? Can they confirm the location and the date? Is his narrative consistent? The embarrassment he mentioned helps explain the timeline. It doesn't automatically negate the claim.
Which brings us to another logistical oddity here. He didn't even file the report in Los Angeles where the incident allegedly happened.
No, he didn't. He went to the police in Largo, Florida on September 20th. And that geographical separation is what kicks off this whole procedural journey for the investigation to even begin. The textbook example of jurisdictional logistics.
So before we get into that journey from Florida to LA, the police report apparently contained details of a second incident.
Yes, and this is crucial. It suggests that what happened in 2020 wasn't just a one-off event. It may have led to direct consequences for the accuser.
So the report wasn't just about the 2020 warehouse incident.
Not at all. It also included an incident from about a year later, in March of 2021. And this detail really provides the context for why the accuser might have stayed silent for so long.
Okay, so let's get into this secondary claim. We're calling it the snitch confrontation. What does the producer claim happened a year after the alleged sexual battery?
The accuser claims that in March 2021, he was physically accosted. Specifically, he says two men covered his head before Sean Combs entered the room.
So some kind of forcible detention.
It sounds like it. The setting is less specific than the warehouse, but the alleged action is one of, non-consensual forcible detention.
And what was the point of this confrontation, according to the report?
Verbal intimidation. Pure and simple.
Yeah.
The accuser alleges that Combs came in and specifically called him a snitch.
Wow, okay, that word changes everything.
It transforms the entire narrative. Suddenly, the 2021 incident is directly tied to the 2020 sexual battery claim. It suggests that by March 2021, Combs may have believed the producer was a threat, that he might talk.
So why include this 2021 incident in a report about a 2020 sexual battery? From an investigator's point of view, what does that connection do for the case?
It serves two massive purposes. First, it directly supports the accuser's reason for waiting so long to report. I mean, if you were already embarrassed in 2020 and then a year later you're physically detained and called a snitch,
That would definitely make you think twice about going to the police.
it creates a very clear pattern of intimidation and potential retaliation. So that bolsters the credibility of his silence. And second, it changes the legal perception of the alleged crime. It's not just a single isolated sexual battery anymore. It's a potential pattern of harassment, coercion, and then intimidation to ensure silence.
That's extremely valuable for an investigation. It establishes motive and context.
It paints a much broader and much darker picture. It suggests the trauma from 2020 was compounded by a real fear of retaliation in 2021.
So investigators will be looking for any evidence connecting the two events now.
Absolutely. Text messages, any possible witnesses to that 2021 confrontation, maybe even financial records that show some kind of consequence after the warehouse incident. The 2021 claim isn't just an add-on, it's the framework that helps you understand the fear behind the 2020 claim.
Okay, so let's get back to the logistics. The report is filed in Largo, Florida. The crime allegedly happened in LA. How does that work? How does the report get from A to B?
This is a great look at how jurisdiction really functions. The accuser goes to the police in Largo on September 20th. Now, standard procedure is that law enforcement has to take a report when a victim comes to them, no matter where the crime happened.
So the Largo police document the whole thing.
They document the entire claim, but their legal authority, their jurisdiction ends at the Florida state line. They can't investigate a crime in Los Angeles.
So the evidence has to be officially transferred.
That's exactly right. Because the alleged crime happened in an LA warehouse, the LA County Sheriff's Department has jurisdiction. The Largo Department packages up that initial report, they call it an out-of-jurisdiction report, and sends it over. Our sources confirm the LA Sheriff's Department got the official copy from Florida on the Friday before they made their announcement.
And what does that official transfer actually look like? Is it just an email?
It's of a formal handoff. The Florida agency sends the whole file, the accuser's written statement, any initial notes from the officers, contact info to the correct department in LA. That physical or digital transfer is like flipping a switch. It officially activates the investigation in Los Angeles. The LASD is now obligated to treat this as a brand new case.
And now they are actively investigating. What are the first steps for them, though? This is a 4-year-old case, and the accused is already in a federal prison on the other side of the country.
They've got some major hurdles for sure, but their initial steps will be very systematic. They'll try to verify every single detail the accuser provided. That means search warrants or subpoenas to find records of that 2020 photo shoot. Who organized it? Who else was there? Where exactly was this warehouse?
They need to establish the basic facts of the scene of the crime.
They have to. They'll also search for any communication records between Combs and the accuser around the time of both the 2020 and 2021 incidents. They have to confirm the timeline before they can even think about moving towards potential criminal charges.
We should also touch on the statute of limitations here. It's a 2020 incident. Are they still within the legal window in California to even bring a sexual battery charge?
That's the huge question, and it's what the defense team is looking at right now. Generally, California law has a pretty long window for these kinds of claims, sometimes years, depending on the specifics. For a standard adult sexual battery claim, it's often 3 to 10 years. So since this was in 2020, they are almost certainly still within a prosecutable time frame.
But the clock is ticking.
The clock is definitely ticking. And the delay itself, even if it's legally permissible, becomes the defense's #1 weapon in court.
Speaking of the defense, our sources noted that Combs' legal team has been silent. No immediate comment.
That's not a surprise at all. It's standard legal practice, and it's highly strategic. His lawyer didn't respond to an email seeking comment. When you're a defense attorney and serious, multi-year-old claims suddenly pop up in a police report, the first thing you do is say nothing.
Why is that?
You need time. You need to get your hands on that official police report, analyze every single word the accuser said, look at the statute of limitations, and start trying to find any evidence or witnesses for your own client. Saying anything prematurely is almost always a mistake.
And it must be more complicated since their client is already incarcerated. They're managing his current sentence while this whole new criminal probe is unfolding.
Precisely. Being in prison doesn't give you immunity from being prosecuted for past crimes. But the logistics of mounting a defense for a client who's already locked up, it presents unique challenges. Communication, reviewing documents, even just managing public perception, though that's probably the least of their worries right now.
It really is this dual track. The system gives closure with one hand and opens up a whole new can of worms with the other.
This deep dive has really been about these two parallel realities that define Sean Combs' legal situation right now. It's just a compelling, if unsettling, look at how the justice system operates in these complex layers.
So let's try to summarize the key takeaways for you, the listener. Let's peel apart these two main threads one last time.
Okay, first you have the established past, the reality. Combs is in FCI Fort Dix, a federal prison. He's serving a fixed 4-year sentence for those specific prostitution-related federal crimes. And, importantly, it was much less than the life sentence he could have gotten if he'd been convicted on the big racketeering charges.
And while he's in there, he's actively participating in the system. He's working in the chapel. He's in that intense drug and rehab program, all of which are required steps if he wants to earn time credits and get out before that June 2028 date.
That's thread 1. Then you have thread 2, the potential future legal trouble. A brand new, completely separate investigation is now underway by the LA County Sheriff's Department.
And that investigation is focused on these specific sexual battery claims from that 2020 warehouse incident. And those claims are directly linked by the accuser to that later confrontation in 2021 where he was allegedly called a snitch.
And the whole process connecting these two threads is really what's key here. The delay in reporting was explained by the accuser's feeling of embarrassment, the power dynamics of the industry. And that delay is what forced this jurisdictional handoff, the police report, having to travel from Florida all the way to LA. It just shows that time and distance don't necessarily protect you from an investigation.
It really does connect back to this idea of how information gets processed under duress. The system is working on two totally conflicting timelines. One is about finality for past crimes, and the other is about delayed justice for even older alleged actions.
And that leads us right to our final provocative thought for you to consider. Something to mull over that really gets at the heart of the contrast we've been exploring.
We know that the federal prison system demands this full, verifiable engagement from inmates. You have to work the job, you have to do the rehab, you have to show that you're making an effort. That's the price you pay to earn an earlier release. The whole idea is based on atonement and reform.
Right. So here's the thought. If the whole point of that system is to pursue sentence reduction through apparent rehabilitation, what are the broader implications for this system and for the individual inmate when serious investigations into conduct that happened before the conviction continue to emerge, long after that person has started their official journey of atonement? Does the constant emergence of new pre-conviction allegations challenge the very idea of a structured, fixed rehabilitation process that the justice system relies on? It really asks whether the system can ever truly achieve closure on an individual while their past actions remain a completely open question.